Dear students, myself Yashpal, Associate Professor, Government PG College, Jhanjhanu. Today we discuss P.B. Shelley as a poet and his famous poem Ode to the West Wind. P.B. Shelley is a great revolutionary poet, a great poet of nature, and his poetry contains personal elements of the poet. When we read P.B. Shelley's poetry, we find that there is a great relation between Shelley's life and his poetry. His poetry is the artistic version of his life. His contribution to poetry is remarkable. He contributed a new quality of literature, a quality of ideality, a quality of freedom, spirituality, and his mind was metaphysical. He was a revolutionary poet. He did not believe in the customs and conventions of the world. He is the singer of the unborn utopia. He imagines a new kind of world and he wants to create a new kind of world, a new kind of system. He is fully fed up with the age old customs and traditions. He was little interested in the past. He thinks that past customs and conventions which are of no use today should get rid of. His eyes are fixed intently on the future. He wants to make a future that will be free from the conventions, customs, and the age old system which has become useless. To renovate the world, to bring about the golden age, is his constant aim. In the poem Ode to the West Wind, the poet writes, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? The poet wants to say that if the bad days, if the days are not good, certainly there will be a change and there will be good days because change is the rule of nature. Nothing is permanent. The age old customs and conventions should die and there will be a new age, there will be a new era of his imagination. The poet wants the shackles are to be swept away. The shackles, according to the poet, are the great hurdle for the development, for the innovation of humanity. The shackles are to be swept away and a new society without caste distinction and governmental machinery is to be reeled upon its ruins. The poet hopes that the change will come soon. He is one of the supreme poets of love because to him love is a transcendental force kindling all things into beauty. It is this power which sheds light upon the tiniest worm and animates it with fire, and it is the moral force which is to govern the relations of men in the golden age. So, his love is different from other poets. His conception of love is intellectual or spiritual, inspired by Plato. As a love poet, he differs from Byron and Keats and other poets of his age. In him, the physical aspect of love has little room. To him, love is a force that is a universal force, that is a force that will change the system. Poet of beauty, he was a great poet of beauty. The world of Shelley's poetry is governed by the laws of beauty, which is manifestation of love and a heavenly vision. Beauty to his imagination was always in some degree a negation of fixed form. He was also a poet of light. According to the poet, the whole world was bathed in the light issuing from heaven. So the poet is hidden in the light of thought. To him, nature is a spiritual power. Wordsworth spiritualizes nature, Shelley realizes. Shelley is a poet who mentions his love of nature as a vision. He was also a poet, lyrical poet, a musical poet. His lyrical excellence is praiseworthy and uncomparable. In the poem Ode to the West Wind, the poet mentions his philosophy. He describes his philosophical attitude, his philosophical idea, his vision, his thought related to the visionary world. In the first stanza of the poem, the poet implores the west wind to listen to his prayer and accedes to his request. He requests to the west wind to listen to him because the poet wants to say something to the people. He says that the west wind is both the destroyer and preserver. The west wind is destroyer in the sense that it takes away the dead leaves, and it is the preserver of seeds that the west wind possesses. So in this way, the west wind is destroyer of the useless things. The leaves are dead leaves are of no use. So the west wind destroys them and preserves the seeds which are useful, which are to flourish again. The west wind drives the dead leaves over the earth and thus proves to be a great destroyer. The west wind at the same time drives the seeds with her current and buries them under the ground, where they lie sleeping throughout the winter. And when the spring season comes, the seeds revives by making sprouted and get a new life. In this way, the west wind destroys the useless things and preserves the useful things. In the second stanza, the poet describes the effect of the west wind over the sky. Her swift current drives the clouds over the blue sky. West wind takes away the clouds from one place to another place, and in this way, west wind is the cause of raining, lightning in the sky. So, the raining, lightning is the result of the west wind. In the third stanza, the west wind awakens the Mediterranean Sea from the summer sleep. The spirit of the sea observes the old Roman palaces and towers and sees them reflected from the bright surface of the sea. In the stanza fourth, the poet implores the west wind to carry him on her current as a wave. This is the most important part of the poem, in which the poet is expressing his personal feelings. He wants to be carried with the west wind so that he can do what he wants to do. So the poet wants to be a wave, a leaf, a cloud, because he wants to share the driving force of her strength. In the days of his childhood, the poet was the companion of her wandering and could overturn her in her swiftest speed. But now the poet admits that he has been cast upon the thorns of life and he bleeds. The poet says, I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. Oh, lift me as a wave, as a cloud, I bleed. In his youth, he was a wild, swift, and proud. But time has trampled him down. Hence, he entreats her to grant him a part of her strength and lift him out of his hidden condition and inspire with fresh life. The poet wants power from the west wind so that he can do what he wants to do, so that he can change the social system, the age old customs, the useless social traditions. In the fifth stanza, the poet entreats the west wind to inspire his spirit so that he may be able to sing of the regeneration of human race. He wants to sing with the help of the west wind about the regeneration of the human race. He has lost the wild enthusiasm of his youth. He requests her to grant him strength and liberty so that thus, inspired by her, her heart may yield its hidden music in the form of powerful songs about the revival of noble ideals in mankind. In this way, the whole poem is full of the ideology of the poet, the personal thinking of the poet, and his vision related to the change of the system. The lines, if winter comes, can spring be far behind, is a clear indication that change is the rule of nature and change will certainly come. So that useless things, the dead system, the dead customs will be destroyed and a new system will be carried out. In this way, we can say that the poet P.B. Shelley is a romantic poet, but his philosophy is different from the